Hey guys, Brad from Drathrorol Games here, and I'm here with a bunch of people from my locals to have a discussion. So everybody can introduce themselves. Why don't you go first?
Hi, my name is Jason.
Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm George.
And we're here to talk about the next era of Yu-Gi-Oh! So we all know that the Vraids era is ending sometime next year. They cycle out eras of Yu-Gi-Oh! Every 3 years. About 2-3-ish years ago, they started the Vraids era. And what we're here to discuss today is, what do we think Master Rule 5 is going to be, or do we think there's going to be a Master Rule 5 at all?
Wait, that's what we're here to discuss? I thought we were talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 4. Unbelievable.
Can't look like this.
Yeah, well, I mean, as great as Season 4 was, I mean, that's not what's going to get all the clicks, man. So I figure we'll just, all go around discussing what are our thoughts on what's going to happen next. So does anyone want to go first in particular?
I can take first go.
Okay.
Alright, so the way I see it, Konami is Konami, and Konami is the worst. So we all know that every single version of summoning has just power crept the last. Fusions became more powerful, then we had synchros, which were, more generic than fusions. We had Xyz, which were literally just two monsters with the same level. Then we got Links, where you brought out a more powerful monster just by having any two monsters. Just at the point where it's like, two monsters gets you, 3 negates now? So, what is the next logical step in power creep? And I think that we're going to have monsters that just summon themselves from the deck. Possibly the extra deck, possibly the main deck. Now, this is an idea that I am stealing from Card Fight Vanguard. The accuracy of how this mechanic works in the actual game, I don't know. I just watched the show because it's terrible. But I saw a clip where this one guy just kept summoning a monster, and it was like, and then he calls his mate, and these were just two monsters that kept summoning each other. And it gave me the idea of, what if instead of having to summon a monster by getting rid of resources, you just had to meet certain conditions for the monster to be summoned? I'm going to call this either like a friendship summon or a partner call, something like that. Because the idea is flashy and flamboyant. It covers the idea of power creeping the previous version. It's just summon out a new monster, so super generic, you can't afford not to do it, so Konami makes that nice money. It also has a nice mechanic that will be flashy enough for the show and can potentially be used to once again emphasize Yu-Gi-Oh's big reoccurring theme of friendship as opposed to what it originally was, which is of course vengeance and just really being messed up. I think that this mechanic, I personally think of it as an extra deck mechanic, but it could also just be a new main deck mechanic. That these are monsters that just summon themselves when a specific condition is met. The reason I kind of like it in the extra deck is because Links inherently kind of balance the extra deck. I mean, if you just go ahead and use your imagination.
Yeah.
Because you would still have to, you could either summon out one partner monster, or, do a partner call, but then your extra monster zone is taken up. Or you have to engage with the previous mechanics. Once again, you have to buy more cards to get those extra arrows, and then you can partner call one, and that partner that you just summoned could achieve the condition for yet another, making it for very flashy anime moments where somebody summons out 15 monsters from their extra deck, costing literally nothing.
Well, that was very, very detailed. So, yeah. And anyone else want to take a crack at what they think is going to happen next?
I can go next here.
Right.
So, we've seen a few different things here. I had a few different theories about what was going on, like Jackie's idea of, just a new summoning mechanic from the extra deck, the legendary red cards that a lot of people are talking about. And these cards are going to have to be red. Or I would like a bright, brilliant, verdant green. Not the green of a spell card, but just like emerald green.
Personally, I'm still waiting on orange.
A couple of other ideas that I tossed around is, one of the things that makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Unique amongst other card games is the lack of a energy system, no resources. Magic has mana, Pokemon has energy, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Does have no resources. The whole idea was always the normal summon. You get one normal summon per turn, and that was it. And that was kind of your limit to how many cards you could play per turn. But then, of course, as we moved on to special summoning, there is no limit to special summoning. Sure, there's cards you can play, summon limit, there can only be one, things that just limit how often you can summon, and now we even come out with cards like Nibiru that punishes you for summoning too often. But I think for Master Rule 5, they are going to introduce a resource system beyond just the conditions of the cards. So rather than the cards in your hand, the cards in your deck, what have you, being the resource that you need in order to do your summoning, they're actually going to have some sort of token or energy cost or something that you're going to have that drains the more you special summon per turn. Think, what video game was that? I want to say Bravely Default, or Octopath Traveler, where you build up points per turn towards a super attack. And as you don't use the attack, the points build further, but every time you use it, you spend that resource and it builds up again. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to do something similar. You're going to have a counter. This counter is going to build every turn you don't go ham on special summoning. And then if you want to just blow your load and spend all your tokens in one go, there you go. You just built an unbreakable board. But if you want to conserve those resources, maybe save it for later game, or if you just want to kind of keep a steady tempo going, 1 or 2 summons per turn, don't really let that resource top off, but don't let it drain too low either. I think it's going to be something like that.
Oh, that's interesting. That could sort of play into what's that trap card? The Clock of Doom or something. The one where it's like it advances the turn counter one. It could potentially. Do you think it should interact with like the turn counters that cards that that previously were used to get that advance the turn clock one, which can only ever be used with something like say Swords of Revealing the Light or Final Countdown.
Yeah, I think something like that could make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It would give these old cards a lot more use because you would have something that making the game last longer actually means something. No more FTKing or OTKing or anything like that because the game will have to go 5, 6, 10 turns before you could build enough of this energy or these tokens in order to summon 15 extra deck monsters in one turn. So the games by default will be longer. Now, I don't know how that's going to play along with time rules and Konami not wanting the games to last all day, but the whole point behind Link summoning was Konami's futile attempt to slow the game down. Which,
they
of course,
introduced Isolde, which lets you go +4.
Yeah, which failed miserably. And of course, now they tried to correct their mistake by introducing Link monsters that have the condition of this cannot be used as Link material this turn that it's Link summoned. So they're trying to do that, but I think that when they do the revamp, it's just going to be something built into the very rules of the game to kind of slow down the pace and bring it back to how it once was. Because, nobody likes, you have 40 minutes to play and the game ends and you spend 10 minutes watching your opponent play solitaire, he builds an unbreakable board, you get one turn, you play a card, and then he OTKs you the next turn. So, sure, you burned 40 minutes, but 3 turns have passed. I think something like that could really make a lot of sense towards adjusting the pace of the game, bringing it back to where Konami wants it.
Yeah. Okay. George, any thoughts on what you think might happen next?
Well, I was going to touch a lot on the resource aspect of most games in comparison to Yu-Gi-Oh! Jason did an amazing job touching on that, so that saves a lot of breath for me. With my looking forward to the game, I think that the last 2 Master Rule editions, one, the introduction of Pendulum Zones and completely changing the layout of the board, and 2, the introduction of the extra monster zones and changing the layout of the board. With this Master Rule that is upcoming, we won't see any board changes. I think Konami has done a pretty good job of curbing the extra deck spam to an extent, I think using tokens for links kind of exacerbated the issue. That was quelled with Xyz, but then we saw this problem just like we did with Synchros. But regardless, I think maybe what we could see is some additions to the main board that we have now. Maybe, for example, Monster Zone 1 is a zone that could be reserved for fusion monsters, 3 for Synchros, 5 for Xyz. Off the bat, you're not forced to go into a link in order to put that monster to a zone there. It also helps the archetypes that try and have all of those built-in summon mechanics, like you see with Altergeist or Dino Wrestler, a lot of the new archetypes that came in, even with Pendulum Magicians from the series previous. A resource addition with special summoning is also really cool. I think that would help create a more fair and balanced game. No one wants to play against an unbreakable board and be forced to draw cards like maybe Sphere Mode or Super Poly or Nibiru. So with the introduction of the new Yu-Gi-Oh series, I think that we could see a competitive tier mulligan rule introduced into the game. If I'm going second, I don't want to be forced to draw one of the 9 to 12 to 15 hand traps that I have just to potentially draw one of them to beat my opponent's board, only to lose it to one of their inherent ways to stop it, or something like, God forbid, a magical Midbreaker Field or Called by the Grave. But those types of changes would definitely help balance out the playing field. So I don't think that maybe there would be a new extra deck mechanic, so to speak, but maybe small quality of life improvements to the game. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been seeing its largest tournament attendance, and for a good reason, over the last few years. So, I mean, what they're doing is working, and I think if they listen to the players and they use a lot of their previous time procedures and tournament procedures, we could see Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitively flourish into its best state. And its Pyro Clock of Destiny was
Yes, thank you. Oh my gosh, that was gonna bug me all night.
And I was also thinking too, that's basically what turbo duels are. You build up your speed counters every turn.
Yeah.
And then you have to, but that was for speed spells instead of for speed summoning.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All right. So I like what you said about how we're probably not gonna get a new board. I definitely don't want to see a new board for Master Rule if we do get a Master Rule 5. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure we will get a Master Rule 5. I'm more on the side of the fence where it's like we might see something similar to GX where everything just stays the same as the previous, but maybe we put more emphasis on something else, or if we do get a new Master Rule, nothing like a board change or a new summoning mechanic. I really, really hope we do not get a new summoning mechanic. We cannot handle a new summoning mechanic. New players cannot handle a new summoning mechanic.
Extra deck to 20.
Maybe if we get the extra deck to 20, maybe we can handle a new summoning mechanic. But anyway, shit, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so we can't handle a new summoning mechanic. But if we do get a new Master Rule, I'm hoping. Okay, so when we got Master Rule 3, in addition to the pendulum zones and the pendulum summoning mechanic and all that, we did get 2 additional rules. The first player can't draw on their first turn, and each player gets to control a field spell. I'm thinking that if we do get a new Master Rule, it'll be something minor like that. Where we just get some different sort of mechanical fix rules sort of thing, and everything more or less stays the same, because I kind of like where things are right now. And okay, so 2 of the really, really popular theories about what's going to happen in Master Rule 5 if we get one are are deck masters.
No Arc Best Filler season.
And deck masters and implementing skill cards into the actual game instead of just speed duels. I see one problem with both of those things. I see one huge problem with both of those theories, and that is, with each new summoning mechanic, you don't have to use it. You don't have to implement it if you don't want to. They came out with synchros, you could still play your fusion deck. When they came out with XEs, you could still play synchro. Pendulums, you didn't have to bother with it. Link, to a certain extent, you didn't have to use Link monsters. Your deck just really sucked without them. But you didn't technically have to play them if you didn't want to. If we implement deck masters, and if we implement skill cards, those cards would be completely 100% mandatory. And I don't see them doing that. because then you can't just let's say you're a returning player, returning from I don't know 2003 with your hodgepodge 60 card deck of one-offs, and you go to your locals, but you can't compete in said locals because you don't have a deck master or you don't have a skill card, and you absolutely have to have that card in order to have a deck, period, in order for them to recognize your deck, in order for you to play. I don't see them doing that. It's very exclusive. And if they did implement something like that where you did have to, I mean, sure, it would get you to have to buy more product, which is ultimately what they want.
Konami is Konami, and Konami is the worst.
And to that point too, that's also one of the things that makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Unique amongst other card games is we're the only card game that doesn't have set rotations.
Right.
So when you talk about how having these new cards would be mandatory, yeah, but that's going to be just like every other card game. Sure, I can't roll into Friday Night Magic with my 15-year-old sliver deck and just, expect to sit at the table and play. It's, something where sometimes you have to evolve and adapt.
Right, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Has always been one of the, pretty much the only game that didn't have set rotation, and if they made it so that if they suddenly implemented set rotation, or if they suddenly implemented something where you had to have something in order to be able to play, that it would immediately turn people off, and or new players or returning players off, and I don't see them wanting to kick out potential customers.
Now,
sort of deal.
excuse me, we have set rotation at 1. Thank you very much.
Well, now, what about, say, if, going back to Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
Sure, they have set rotation, so I can't bring in my 20-year-old deck and play that, or my, a one with nothing deck and come with that. But I can walk into any card store and say, hey, I want to play Magic the Gathering, and they hand me a deck that I could play with that day for free. If Konami were to do something similar with okay, well, you have to have these skill cards, says, well, here's a 5-card skill starter pack available at every OTS store, free of charge if you ask for it.
Well, I don't know about free of charge if you ask for it, but okay, maybe they could.
I also would like to bring
that.
up one point.
Okay.
You said I can bring in my 60-card deck from 2003 that I was playing with all of my friends. It's full of cards like Pot of Greed and Change of Hearts.
Assuming that you read the ban list, that you updated it to the ban list at least. I'm not saying that your deck is gonna be good. I'm just saying that as long as you adhere to the ban list, your hodgepodge deck of 60 cards, 60 random one-offs, is technically a viable deck. You can get into a tournament with it and just completely scrub out. You'll completely scrub out, but at least you'll get to play.
Get to drop my 3 copies of Harpy's Brother right there.
It's Sky Scout now.
Not my deck.
We're back at 2003 deck. It's Harpy's Brother, damn it.
I'm playing my McDonald's limited edition Frog the Jam.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I do like that though, because you are right, that would be alienating to older players. Because I remember when I got back into the game about 1.5 years ago, one of the first things that the guy running the counter at the OTS store said was, are you familiar with the current rule set? And I was like, oh yeah, I've brushed up on Master Rule 4. I understand the link summoning and the link mechanic. And again, too, like the summoning mechanics. That's one of the things that makes Yu-Gi-Oh! So daunting amongst other cards. Because, Magic the Gathering, all right, you got mana, you got combat, and that's about it. And then you got, okay, well, you're only allowed to have one legendary creature out at one time. Something like that. Okay, easy enough. Pokemon, okay, here's how the evolution mechanic works. There you go, that's it. Yu-Gi-Oh! Well, this is how you fusion summon. Now, you have to fusion summon, but you have to draw this special card that usually called polymerization. But now you have these cards that are fusion, but do fusion, but sometimes you can only fuse certain monsters. And then you have cards that fuse that don't have fusion in the name at all. And then, of course, there's some fusion monsters where you don't need fusion spells at all. And they say in which case you don't use polymerization. So, and that's just the first extra deck mechanic.
Synchro what? Synchro summon. What summon? Synchro summon.
Wait,
What?
I seem to have suddenly stopped caring.
Oh, I was rereading the GX manga, and Takashi was actually doing the little doodles that he had in the back, where he talked about his daily life and things like. He talked about how when they were introducing the synchro mechanic, because 5Ds was airing as the GX manga was being published, and how he couldn't wrap his mind around synchros, and he refused to play them, but he lost every time because he was stuck trying to do fusions.
Yeah. But
So,
anyway, does anyone have any other thoughts at all? Or
well, this is sort of a possibility. We keep
Okay.
talking about how the game has become incredibly complicated, but there is a much simpler version of the game out there. A couple, in fact. We have YuGiOh Duel Links, which is not as simple as it once was, and Speed Duels, which is basically YuGiOh trying to do like a soft reboot form.
It's the Marvel Ultimate Universe of Yu-Gi-Oh!
Exactly.
Right.
Well, what if, and this is kind of absurd, honestly, the more I think about it, the less it seems likely, but what if Konami would just start doing price support for alternative ways of playing?
that
Like, actually support
that
the
would be
simpler
nice.
games.
That would be nice. Do
Yeah.
like actually have prize support for various different formats or different ways of playing. That would be nice, but
You know what, that's an outlandish Master Rule 6. Forget I ever mentioned it.
And they did bring it up, and you see Konami of Europe being a lot more vocal now, doing a lot more community outreach.
Mhm.
I don't know what Konami of America is doing. I guess Jerome, was just sitting with his laptop, just seeing what's
They're
going on.
short printing Bane.
Yes, but Konami of Europe, they're sitting down with other Yu-Gi tubers, they're conducting interviews, and they did kind of mention that, and we see this at our own locals, like say offering prize support, like so the people who want to roll in with their 19-year-old deck and play Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity with traditional format, but at our locals, when they do traditional format, nobody shows up. So we just
because it's all FTKs.
yeah. So they could offer prize support for these alternate formats, but I don't want to play GOAT. I don't want to play traditional. It's just not as fun as playing with like the latest and greatest cards.
Yeah. George, you've been quiet for a while. Anything to add or?
I like Go for Man.
All right. So I think I'll call it here. These are our thoughts. Let us know down in the comments what you guys think. We'd really love to hear your thoughts. Any feedback, any criticism, obviously welcomed and warranted. Thanks again to my guys from Locals for showing up and doing this discussion with me. It's been a lot of fun. Good excuse for us to hang out. And yeah,
I got an excuse to wear a funny hat.
And
That's all I'm ever looking
also
for.
comment what color do you think the new extra deck monster should be? Because
if we get one, all of us are really hoping that we don't. But if we have to suffer through another one, what color do you think it'll be?
they kind of cheated with links. I mean, technically you say ritual monsters are azure and link monsters are cerulean.
No, wait. Ritual monsters are indigo.
Rituals also have black text versus white text for the Link monsters.
Yeah, and
splitting hairs.
and the link monsters have those hexagons.
Yes, everyone loves a good tessellation.
Those regular geometric solids, though. Those.
All right, we'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.
Okay. All right.
Hey, get some water.
Sorry, George. I stole your thunder.
That was really I was just speaking. I'm like, oh man, there goes most of what I wanted to say. It's good. No, you hit it. You hit it fucking perfectly, you guys. Real good.
That was the only thing.
I feel like one of us should have brought up the deck masters, so that could have been brought down.
I think it was Bravely Default was the game I'm thinking of, where you build up energy.
Yeah, I think it's a Bravely Default.
Or Octopath.
Mhm.